Welcome to Miss Win Checking In, the space where creativity meets healing. Here, we explore the path of mindful expression through the lens of writing, wellness, and soulful storytelling. Take a moment to pause and ask yourself, how are you feeling right now? If you're watching this on YouTube, drop an emoji in the comments to represent how you're feeling. And then let's check in at the end. Let's take a deep breath, tune in, and prepare to create from within. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Miss Win Checking In. I'm Miss Win, and today I am back with another special guest, Miss Kelly Love. From the age of 5, Kelly knew her calling was to travel the world. Ooh, another nomad, teaching and guiding others on their healing journey. What she couldn't have imagined was the spiritual transformation she'd endure to gain the strength, resilience, and wisdom to fulfill that purpose. Kelly, she blends her hard earned life lessons from the School of Hard Knocks, which we've all been there before, with professional expertise in psychomatic therapy, integrative trauma release, and energy work. Through her work, she empowers others to reprogram the body, mind, and reconnect with their soul's authentic blueprint. As the creator of Soul Much Love, that's SOUL, Much Love, a transformative 10-week program, Kelly leads participants on a deep dive into using the body to heal the body, mind, and soul. With body language as the foundation, she teaches techniques to rewrite old patterns, embodiment practices for emotional alignment, and exercises to sculpt the body into its truest form. Kelly's mission is to guide others in living a life of freedom, authentic expression, and soul deep connection. Welcome, Miss Kelly Love. We are so excited. I told her before we got started, just want to throw this in there. This is a unique episode, and so I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. When you said you haven't really heard about it, I was like, great, this is my favorite. Like starting from
Yeah,
scratch. And
wonderful.
just one little correction, it's psychosomatic therapy.
Okay.
And I want to make that distinction because it's the relationship between the psyche and the soma, the body. So that's what that full word means.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, let's jump right into it. We have some good questions right here. Can you share then a time when body language revealed something words couldn't? And then how did it impact that situation?
Yeah, I have a couple of stories I can share. So I'm going to start with something that's a little bit lighter, like something we can use in every day, and then I'm gonna go for a deep dive because I have two levels deep and deeper. So this
Mm,
is how we're gonna roll. So I actually had a friend who was telling me he was gonna have this individual move in as a roommate. Now, as a face reader and as someone that's already familiar with this guy, I could just see some things that were going to happen. My
mm,
friend was like very good with his money, very conservative. And my other friend had some telltale signs on his face that showed he was not good with money and
mm,
loose with his money, loose with his morals, not reliable. And that was seen in like he had really wide nostrils that flared up so
mm,
that this is the solar plexus on the face, our personal power. So it shows that his power is just like dispersed everywhere. It's not focused and concentrated. And as well, he had really big lips. And when he would talk, it was like, his whole mouth would move, right? So
mm.
he was a big mouth, a loud mouth, a talkative guy. Like this is just very basic understanding of body language. And I said, look, man, I love this guy, but I'm going to tell you these are some challenges you're going to have in this relationship. He's probably not going to pay rent on time. He's going to be loose with his money. He has these certain issues that he's addicted to, and that's likely going to affect your living situation. I would suggest coming up with a contract, getting a deposit, first month's rent. And he's like, no, 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 it'll be fine. It'll be fine. 2 weeks later, Aurelia, what I said was going to happen happened. and they ended up not living together because he was unwilling to accept who this individual was presenting himself to be. And that's what body language
Mm.
is. It's just looking at what is the emotional energy that shaped me and how is it shaping my personality and character.
Wow.
And yeah, right. Now, do you want to go a layer deeper?
Yeah, let's do it. I think my first thought was so first of all, I'm like, let me look in the mirror. What does my face say? And I'm like, ooh, can she read? Can she read? That was the first thought. Then my second thought was, if that guy changes his behavior, will his face change with his behavior? And so that those are just some thoughts that came to mind. But I am curious to hear another story though. We could come back to that.
Yeah. And we are going to get into that later because that is in your list of questions. So I do want
Hmm.
to answer that. And I also kind of want to do some build up. So let's
Okay.
stick with the stories. But also, when you're feeling into how I'm describing this individual and what's landing with you, that is an idea for you to understand yourself, right? I
Hmm.
imagine maybe what you're thinking about is the large mouth because you have big, beautiful lips.
Hmm.
And look what you're doing with it. You are proactively using your voice, your loud mouth, your loud presence
Hmm.
to create this podcast. So there's two different ways
Hmm.
that a large mouth can be expressed, and a lot of that, we're going to be looking at the energy flow of how the lips are actually moving. So
Wow.
his lips are more loose lipped. Like when he's speaking, everything is just like going all over the place. Where when you speak, there's like enunciation, right?
Hmm.
There's direction and focus with how your lips are moving. So even getting into the nuances of that, you can
Wow.
begin to pick out the differences between people with big mouths. Like, what do they really mean?
Hmm. Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you for doing that. That puts me a little bit at ease because I was like, oh my God. Yeah. It always, I don't know. And maybe other people have experienced that. I know because I've met someone before who was like, oh yeah, I'm a body reader. And I'm like, oh man. Oh gosh. I'm like, oh, I wonder what she's thinking about me. But wonderful. So let's get deeper then.
Okay, let's go deeper. So I'm going to give y'all a trigger warning because this is going to have to do with SA, childhood trauma.
Hmm.
So that's your warning. Um, about 2 years ago, my relationship with my mother began to devolve. And it was really interesting because I was like continually healing and becoming better. And I thought I was like doing better at understanding and relating to my mother. And what she ended up doing was cutting off our relationship and saying, I don't love her. She can't be herself around me, doing a lot of projecting. And I was shocked, but I could read the subconscious programming. Like I could read between the lines of the words she was
Hmm.
saying and understand like she was scared of something. She was hiding something. I knew that I had shown up in love. And then 6 months later, I discovered the truth that my mother had actually sexually assaulted me as a baby.
Hmm.
And when I confronted her on this, she went silent. She didn't say anything. She didn't respond. She didn't defend herself, nothing. And I was shattered. And I think what was even more challenging during that situation is there was no reconciliation. I couldn't ask why. I couldn't even ask questions. Like there was no response. And so I went through this process of saying, okay, well, I'm disconnecting because this doesn't feel safe for me anymore. So I went back to my mother's home and collected my deceased daughter's belongings. That's like the last of my belongings that I've been saving.
Hmm.
And when I showed up, my mother didn't say anything to me. I had my friend with me. She talked to him, and that's like a very classic narcissistic move to like make friends with everyone else except for the one that sees through their bullshit, right?
Hmm.
So I'm just watching all this happen. I'm watching my two siblings that are there who have some mental health issues as well. And she doesn't say anything to me. And we go to the garage to get my stuff out. And the only thing she says is, oh my gosh, I feel nauseous. I don't feel good today. And what I did is I went home and I pulled out my book, Messages from the Body, and I looked up, what does nausea mean? And I wrote it out because now that you understand a little bit of the background, I want you to understand like how deep body language and how deeply profound it is. And when I felt this message, I want the audience to understand that this was a message of love. Like, even though my mother could not love me, she could not stand in the truth of her actions. Her soul told me, I love you. I don't feel good about this. And so this is what feeling nauseous means. This is like the extreme of what it could mean.
Mm.
And it says, what a revolting development this is. They're having a fear and disgust reaction to what is happening to them. They're totally rejecting an idea or experience, and they don't want to have anything to do it. They want to throw it right back out again. They feel that something wrong or immoral is happening, and they're inundated with disgust with the situation and themselves. And they're full of fear of the consequences of what's going down. And they feel something dreadful is going to happen. They feel responsible for it, and they wish it hadn't happened. And they are truly sorry that it has occurred. They deeply wish they hadn't done it, and they want things to return to the way they were before it happened. They're full of upset, pain, and sadness. They don't want the situation anywhere near them, and they desperately want to undo the past. They're afraid of the effects of this on their future. They are full of dissatisfaction, disgust, and regret over the way things are. They are saying to themselves over and over, I should have. And they feel personally accountable for everything that happened, particularly the negative outcomes. And their family held them accountable and responsible for all that took place, and all eyes turned in their direction when anything went wrong, which was frequently. And they were made aware that they had no right to commit to anyone or anything else but the continued maintenance of the family. And they therefore have a great guilt about sexuality, success, intimacy, and that these were all evil deeds. And, when I read that, that is for someone that is experiencing nausea on the regular. It's like, look at your life. What is your body? What is your soul upset with? And in that moment, that was her soul's nod to me and saying, I see you. I love you. I don't feel good about this.
Mm.
Even though my ego, my personality may be choosing the darkness, my soul, the truth of me doesn't love this.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep. Yeah, okay. Wow. And so, I mean, what else? What are the most common body language cues that I guess someone can indicate that they're suppressing their emotions? Um, yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we can see the suppression of emotions in people that are choosing to do harmful things and people that are experiencing the harmful things. And
Hmm.
there's, the body is incredibly intelligent in communicating where the suppression is. And
Hmm.
so some of the ways that suppression shows up, we can look at how energy is flowing and we can see, is the energy draining out of somewhere? Or is it gathering up and it's clogging? Like there's something that's clogging the energy and not allowing it to flow.
Hmm.
Or is the energy hardening? Or are they swelling up with either, water weight or fat?
Hmm.
Or is the muscle or the skin dissociating? Like, is it becoming flabby? And so all of these different ways that the skin and the muscle feel, these are references to emotions.
Hmm.
And so what are we stuffing down? So we're able to look at the shape and we're able to feel the texture and the malleability of it to discern what is that emotional energy flow. And so one of the things I like to reframe, because this is very prevalent in our community, and it's fat shaming. It's
Hmm.
when people say, oh, you're fat or they're fat. They say it almost like it's a slur, right?
Hmm.
And what I like to say anytime we're talking about a body issue, because, I was constantly picked on for being skinny. Do you
Hmm.
eat? Are you bulimic? What's going on with you? So
Mhm.
it can go both ways, right? And so
Mhm.
I like to name, what is the emotion behind the fat? What is the emotion behind the skinniness?
Mhm.
So what fat is it's a protective layer that's built. And it's built up by an individual that is attempting to ignore their feelings of discomfort, and they're masking it with this soft outer shell. And
Mhm.
so what's happening is they're taking on the weight of the world's problem. That's why this extra weight gets added on. They're taking on the weight of the world's problems, and they're living a life in service to others while ignoring what's going on inside of them. And so that's just layer one, right?
Mhm.
That's just the fat layer. Then we want to get under the fat. What does the muscle feel like? Because that's another a layer of emotional consciousness. So sometimes under the fat layer, there's really hard muscle, like they're very strong.
Mhm.
And that hard muscle is speaking to armoring. I don't feel safe. I've got to buckle up and armor down, pull my bootstraps up. And
Mhm.
then under the fat layer, there can also be the dissociated tissue, like the soft dissociated tissue. And this is going to reference somebody that's more in like a flight mode or a freeze mode, whereas the other is going to be like
Mhm.
more fighting and running, running for resources, fighting for resources, hoarding the resources, like afraid to let go. What if I let go? Am I going to have enough? Can I take care of me and everyone else? So when we look at fat as a story of emotions, then we can start building compassion for ourselves. It's not like, oh, I
Mhm.
just need another diet or I need to work out more. Sometimes people are on perpetual diets and they work out. The muscle shows that they're exercising, right? So underneath that are the emotions that are desiring to be addressed. And when we address the fear that's creating this protective layer, then the body says, oh, I can let go of that. I can let
Mhm.
go of the protection.
Wow. Yeah. And so that earlier I was recording another podcast, and the guest that I had on had mentioned that yeah, sometimes our emotions are stored up in our cells. And so for me, I feel like this is connecting that with this, and I'm like, I'm blown away. Of course, I've heard, if you've been in the mental health field, you hear these things, but it's different to kind of let's get deeper and really talk about it and connect it. I didn't know that these things were connected with body language and then the way that the body is shaped. And so when Kelly had brought this to my attention, because this wasn't on my list of topics to talk about, and I thought, well, heck yeah, let's do it. And so I've just been totally silent over here, totally blown away, thinking about my own self. And I know I'm not the only one if you're listening in the audience to this about, wow, you know what? That's true. Sometimes the weight won't come off because there's emotions that you have to deal with. And maybe sometimes, sometimes I think, oh, well, this might be a generational thing. Well, maybe it is a generational thing of you and your family not addressing your emotions, not dealing with that. Being self-aware, you can be self-aware, and this is what I've said before, is you could be self-aware that something is wrong, but until you decide to do something about it, you're going to continue in that loop. You're going to continue to you know, expand, um, and it might not be in the best way that you would want it to be in. And so I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes. This is good. We're just barely in the first 10 minutes.
I love this. This honestly, I live, eat, breathe body language because it really
Mm,
did save my life. Like I came into this work really collapsed in my power and feeling like a shook rag doll. And this is what allowed me to decode like where did my energy escape and how do I restore myself? And that's what this is. It's the path of restoration.
yeah, yeah, I love that. And I think you've already talked about it, but if we can go into it again some more, just how does trauma show up in a person's posture or their movement patterns?
Yes, I love this question. So I like to start out with something that we're not going to argue with. Like when we go into a garden and we see a tree that's wilted or it's just not looking healthy, we don't look at the tree and say, "Oh, what a stupid tree. What a dumb tree."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what's wrong with that tree, right? We don't blame the tree for not growing. We immediately think about what's wrong with the environment and why is this tree not growing. And so this is what body language is. Like I have a course called the body archetypes, and it goes through the 4 major archetypes. And one of those archetypes is the collapsed posture. And you can think of this as like the wilted tree who had the burden of carrying the weight of all the branches and the leaves and the fruit, but never got the nourishment it needed to actually support the growth of all of that. And so now the tree begins to wilt and collapse under the pressure of all of this weight. So the nourishment that this tree needs, or that an individual needs that has a collapsed posture, is a lot of filling up. This person has had terrible boundaries, has felt really disconnected from themselves and the world. And now their body is asking them, reconnect to what it feels like to feel alive. Like, what does it take to bring you back to life? So that's one way of how we can look at someone's posture and discern what's shaping them and what they need to feel full.
Yeah. Well, what do you do like when you identify these things? Because for me, I'm going to be looking now at everybody. Later on, I have a family event, so I'm going to be looking at them like, you got some emotional baggage. You need to still No, my question is, how do what do you do with this information? I guess as a person on the outside looking in, what do you do?
Well, body language, first and foremost, is for you,
Okay.
because this is your connection to your source. And so once you get really clear on what your soul is communicating and what feels aligned for you, what feels like love for you, that's when you can become the clear mirror for other people and be like, hey man, I see you. So, this path of body language, of becoming self-aware, is a path of acceptance. It's looking in the mirror at my reflection and saying, that is what it is. The mirror isn't like, oh, you must have slept the wrong way and that's why your face looks fucked up today. The mirror just says your face looks fucked up, and you've got to figure out, how did it get there, right? Put the pieces together. So that's what body language is. It's this honest reflection of, this is your picture. This is what shaped you. Now let's fill in the details of the story and do something about it. And that's where, accountability and responsibility come into play. And accountability, you are able to take into account the things that have happened to you, how that has affected you, and you are responsible. You are able to now respond to what you've been accountable for and make different choices. And that's the path of body language. It's just looking at all the causes and effects and what that turned out, and what's the new alchemy I need to get a different turnout. So it's not about outsourcing. A lot of us are still looking for that guru to save us, but body language is that internal guru. It is that consciousness of God that says, this is the way to go. This feels good here. This doesn't feel good here. Do more of this, do less of that. We are our own blueprint, and that's what body language teaches.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you said it is for you while you are learning these things, and absolutely can point them out in others. It's ultimately for yourself and for your own healing. And that's something that I've said before, is my healing is a gift for myself, but also to other people as well. Over time, I think they get to experience a better version of me than I'm like, man, and I'm so grateful for the people who have stuck around with me to be able to see my growth, because the girl I was 5 years ago, she was something else, but I was also going through a lot of bullshit at the time. I'm like, man, I look back on pictures of myself and I'm thinking my eyes were different. Like my eyes, and I'm just like, I don't even know what that means. And maybe you can talk about it. I want to say it was almost like a crazy look in my eye. And it was just like,
Can you like reenact it? Like, can you make your eyes look like it now?
I don't know. I almost want to show you a picture if I can. I almost want to show you a picture of what I was looking like. And I just was like a little like googly eyes, let me see, because that might
Like
not.
eyes wide open, kind of like
Yeah,
looking like
kind of,
popping out of
yeah.
your head.
Uh-huh. All the time.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that actually leads into one of the questions I know you had for me, which was, can our body language shift as we
Yes.
heal and as our emotions shift? Well, you just experienced it. So
Okay.
I'm going to explain what the big eyes mean. So when our eyes are big like this, what happens is more of the white is showing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a sign of distress, right? When you see a scary movie,
Wow.
when you go through a situation, you go, or if you are in shock and you're like, what the F just happened? Your
Mm.
eyes go like this. So this is on a very subconscious level, the body communicating, WTF, I'm a little scared.
Mhm.
What's going on? How do I handle this? And it's also a way to like, uh, when you're afraid, you want to open your eyes wide so you can take in all the information and assess your surroundings, right? So now that some time has passed and your eyes
Mhm.
have shifted, I can see that they're not like this,
Right.
and that you have a brightness and a twinkle to your eyes when you speak. So you're feeling a lot more grounded in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more centered. And the eyes are connected to the heart chakra. So this is all about, how is your heart feeling? Are you
Wow.
feeling open to connection, closed down, a little bit nervous and scared, overwhelmed, in shock?
Yeah. Well, can you go more into that, the different chakras? Because you said your nose is your sacral chakra, your eyes are your heart chakras. What are the other ones?
Yeah, so on our face, we have all of our chakras. And if anyone is interested in learning this, I do have an online program.
Hmm.
And it's self-study, but also if you want to go live with me, you can organize a small group and I can teach you. So in the face reading course, one of the things we teach is where all the chakras are. And just like in the body, it starts with the root chakra at the bottom, and then we go up to the crown chakra. So the chin is our root chakra. This is our foundation,
Mm.
how solid and connected and loved we feel to our source. So this is our family, our creator. And then our lips are the sacral center, our center of sensuality, the five senses, and creativity, sexuality, community. So when we have a solid foundation, we feel safe to begin to explore outside of our family and connect with others and co-create. And then moving up is we have our nose. So our nose is our solar plexus, our sense
Oh,
of
sorry.
identity. It's all
Mhm.
right. It's your first time learning. So this is your personal identity, your sense of ego and self, and it's the thing that sticks out farthest from your face. So your nose knows where you're going. Everyone wants to kill the ego,
Mhm.
but the ego is a representation of how much we have felt ourselves, right? The root and the sacral chakra are all about the feeling and the sensing. So we get this sense of ourselves by going out and feeling and exploring and looking at the different reflections in life and saying, this is me, this isn't me. And so we discover our sense of self that way. And this sense of self is what likes to dig its nose into things. It's curious about things. It wants to understand things. So the nose talks about how we're understanding life and ourselves and how curious we are to explore it and express ourselves uniquely. And then we move up the face, the cheeks and the eyes are going to be connected to the heart chakra. So this is the chest or the breasts on the face. And this is
Mm.
the heart as well. So it's speaking to how open are we? What is our perspective of love in the world? And our love is informed by the lower chakras, how loved we felt from our source, how loved we
Mm.
felt in our connections going outside of that, how much we love ourselves. And then this is the love that we're now able to share with the world. And
Mm.
so, do we have that perspective of love, or are we narrow minded or skeptical? We
Mm.
have a skeptical outlook of the world. And then the eyebrows are our throat chakra, and it's our second birthing center. So, this is where we speak the truth of our deepest thoughts and emotions. And so, the eyebrows are going to show how much of that we're expressing or suppressing, repressing, and then our third eye and crown. So that's about seeing things as they are
Mhm.
and connecting to that divine intelligence, universal intelligence.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And so then yeah, so changing our emotions and just being on this healing process, it does change the way that we look. We just said that. And even thinking about myself, yeah, that was the example. And so, I mean, where do you start? So you identify, we're talking about body language and the way that your body is shaped. You can stand in the mirror and kind of point some things out, I think, just from even what you said. So now I have this information. Then what might be like my next steps?
Yeah. So it's about, how do I want to word this? Next steps. Well, when you see your wilted tree, what do? You start
Mm,
problem solving. Why is my tree
yeah.
wilted? Does it need more light, less light, more water, less water? Is there a fungus growing in there? Does it need some extra nutrients? So it's about beginning to pick up the clues in your body of how you're malnourished. So
Mm,
this is where I get into the details of body language. So we look at the structure, first of all. What is the structure that someone came in, their bone structure? Because the bone structure shows what is someone naturally built for? What are they naturally going to be good at? And
mm,
then on top of that bone structure, we're going to be looking at alignment. How aligned are they to their center line of gravity? Are they leaning forward? Are they getting ahead of themselves? Are they back? Are they afraid to really step out in life? Or are they feeling, aligned and present and in the present moment? And then we look at how the flesh begins to fill out on the frame. So if someone's structure is intended to function a certain way, but then the flesh begins to fill out in a way that weighs it down or doesn't support it, that's how we begin to decode. Oh, so I'm armored here. Where do I need to de-armor myself? What happened that made me build this armor? And what do I
mm,
need to do to reverse engineer this? And that's really my specialty. And why I created my So Much Love program is because I show people how to read the language from the feet to the head, and then begin to look at the emotional themes, behavioral themes, and come up with a game plan of how to reprogram the subconscious.
mhm,
And that's done through exercising. So exercises that actually physically realign your body.
mm,
Because when you realign your body, then the messages can begin to connect. And as the messages begin to connect, you begin to feel, oh, this is what I need to do for myself. So it's the physical alignment and then the body language, but then also the embodiment practices. So the way our subconscious works is it can't tell that something happened 20 years ago if we never solved it. It lives in the present moment.
mm,
And so a lot of the practices that I teach individuals in my containers is how to engage that present moment and act out a new ending. So your brain and body think, oh, we solved this. I created something favorable. I can let
mhm.
go of that and have a new focus.
I love that. That makes me think of Neville Goddard's Rewrite Your Day. If your day did not go well, take a minute to kind of rewrite that in your mind. And so when you said that, oh, okay, yeah, that's very true. But what about like, so let's say, because what you did earlier when I was talking about, well, man, I wonder if she's looking at me in my big mouth. I sure was. That was what was on my mind. Things is what how I interpreted what you said. That's not what you said, but that's how I interpreted it. And so how, because I know healing, some stuff, I think for me with my healing, it was identifying my strengths as well, right? Because I think we can get so caught up in, man, I'm so like, I'm out of shape. I got to heal from this. I got to heal from that. And it can be very like what is it? Just not being kind to ourselves. But what's the other side of that? How does different mannerisms reveal confidence versus insecurity? Like what's the other side of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when people hear that I read body language, they automatically are like, they want to hide.
Yeah.
And that is such a telltale
Mm,
sign that we are so misunderstanding of what love is.
mm,
And love is just the truth. Love is here to bring us back to the truth. And so when the body is showing signs of feeling confident or insecure, that's just love saying, I feel really good right now, or I don't feel really good right now.
yeah.
So some things that make me feel that someone feels confident in themselves and in connecting with other people is steady eye gaze.
Mm.
Like when we're having a conversation face to face, especially if it's a one-on-one conversation, how comfortable do they feel looking into my eyes and saying these things?
Mm-hmm.
And when they're looking into my eyes, are they looking down at me like this? Or are they shifting, like, looking down at the ground? Like what is going on with their eyes? Because that says a
Mm.
lot about how confident they're feeling about what they're saying, or where their thoughts are going when they're communicating. Are they going up into the mental zone? Are they thinking about the past and analyzing something because they're looking down here? So when someone can keep a steady eye gaze with me, it shows me that they're level-headed. They have an even perspective out of their heart, right? Because the eyes are the heart chakra.
Mm-hmm.
So they're bringing down the mental, they're bringing up the emotional, and they have a balanced perspective, and they feel confident to look me in the eyes. As well, if their head is looking straight forward, it means they're looking life in the face. They're looking at the present
Mm.
moment. They're not down here thinking about the past or trying to hide. They're not up here dissociating or thinking about the future and forgetting about the present. They're actually present with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the head directly under the shoulders, because a lot of people, their head is coming forward. And so
Mm.
someone that has their head on straight is actually connected to their felt senses and their emotions. When our head comes forward like this, we're cutting off that connection. And so those
Mm.
are some signs that someone is calm, confident, and connected, and willing to connect on a heart-to-heart level. Now, in those same areas, we can see signs of insecurity. So if we have slouched shoulders
Mm-hmm.
or a collapsing chest, um, or when we see people walking with their feet inwards, that's a sign of insecurity or hiding, or doing any version of talking with your arms crossed over in front of you. It's a sign of protection.
Mm.
Yeah, those are a few things that you can look at.
Yeah. Wow. So then, but how do you like tell the difference between that might be social conditioning and then just this person's natural personality traits when you're reading someone's body language?
Yeah, that's a great question. This goes back to a little bit of what I talked about before, where the bone structure reveals someone's blueprint.
Okay.
And then there is an aligned posture. So when we're looking at a body from the side profile, the ear aligns to the shoulder, to the elbow, to the hip, to the knee, to the ankle.
Mm.
That's what aligned is. So if you're falling out of alignment with that, that's how you can know that is a conditioning. That's a condition that's been pushed onto them and put them out of alignment. So it's really just looking at where is the blueprint out of alignment. Where is it adding on too much, taking away, getting ahead, falling behind, collapsing down, getting too big?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. So everybody has like a particular alignment, and it's always like what you just said. Everything is straight like that, right? And
Yep.
if okay, that makes sense. Okay, we're learning something, you guys. I'm taking I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this one again because I'm like, okay, my processing is a little slow, but I think I'm keeping up. So then, how does like childhood emotional conditioning, which maybe we've already talked about this, shape our physical habits and gestures in adulthood?
This is such a good question. And what's interesting, I'm going to start this off by saying that we learn through mirror neurons. So
Hmm.
some things are learned just because we mimic, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
You've seen those videos on social media where it'll be grandpa walking around with his hands behind his back
Mhm.
thinking, and the little toddler is walking around, walking right behind him doing the same thing. So it starts with mimicking, but what happens is that mimicking becomes a behavior.
Hmm.
So it can happen in a couple of different ways. We're mimicking, right? But it can also happen when we are in a survival response. So I'll share a little bit of a personal story to give some perspective to this. So, growing up, I had parents that were legitimate narcissists and psychopaths, like very cruel in their behavior, very intentional and deceptive about it. And so they were incapable of feeling me, and they were incapable of loving me. And so when we come into this earth plane, we come in as love. We are coded with the truth of love. And when we experience things that don't feel like love as a child, and we don't have the vocabulary to attach to that, we begin to create stories in our head. Stories of maybe I'm not worthy to be loved, or maybe I need to do something more to earn the love. And so for me, I was a baby and I was unable to fathom the horrors of what happened to me as a baby and the horrors that continue to happen in childhood. And I began to believe that I was not lovable. And so I treated myself in an unlovable way. You know, when sexual trauma happens and those lines are blurred with love, that type of behavior can carry on into adulthood. And so I found myself carrying on inappropriate sexual boundaries in my relationships as I grew. And as well, I developed a shallow breathing pattern. So constantly being scared of attack or something's going to go wrong, I'm in a constant state of alert and breathing shallow, like playing dead a little bit, or just like conserving my energy so that when I have to fight or survive, I can do it. And then on top of that, you know, I started developing a posture where I was collapsing at my solar plexus, leaning forward, not standing up for myself, and pouring out my heart in service to everyone. So those were some postures that began to take form in me because of learned behaviors from childhood of learning how to survive.
Yeah. And then we've already said it, but I want to say it again, is just once you become aware of these things, then you make a plan to improve, to do better, to heal it. Again, for me, healing is just about having better days, having a better experience according to your own standards. Because I think sometimes for me, I would get caught up like, okay, you need to do better. And this is what I expect for better to be for you, you know. And sometimes I'm missing that mark, but for someone else's expectations, I would miss the mark. But for myself, I'm like, I feel like I'm doing better. Recently, well, not recently, I want to say about a year ago, I was in a situation where I had someone who I respect and love tell me that they were disappointed in me. And I said, well, you know, I've been trying to heal from toxic relationships with men. And I said, I'm so sorry that you're disappointed, but this is what I've been going through. And they said, oh, well, you're doing relationships wrong. You're not supposed to get that attached. That they just shared their feeling on relationships. And I just thought, man, I do not give a damn if you're disappointed in me at that point. And it was just like, you know what, whatever. But yeah, it's just those things of, you know, what does better look like for you? And talking about body language, what might better look like then? If, you know, we're talking about the leaning forward, so then it would just be the opposite. If you're leaning forward, then, you know, better would be leaning back. What else? I know you said some things, but I would like to hear it again.
Well, let's get into that leaning forward and leaning back, and let's get into
Mhm.
the emotional messages behind that, because it's not
Okay.
just about switching up the physical posture. It's about switching up the behavior that formed the physical posture.
Okay.
So the leaning ahead, getting ahead of your center point of gravity means you're getting ahead of yourself, right?
Mhm.
Your head is ahead of the rest of your body. So when your head is out here, it's not listening to the emotions. It's not listening to the felt senses. It's not in the present moment. It's running ahead and it's leaving everything in the dust. So the change behavior that comes is tracking, where am I getting ahead of myself? And how can I come back to the present moment of caring for my emotions and my physical needs, making a plan to move forward in a way that sustains me.
Mhm.
Now, if somebody's leaning back like this, then the question is, what am I afraid of? Why am I afraid to fully be seen and step out and explore life? So it's both and then with, you know, correcting the posture, these are patterns that are developed over decades. And so this is why I go through an exercise program as well with those who work with me, because it's retraining the body to hold itself in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us are unconsciously walking around using our bodies, and we don't even know that we're using them the wrong way, and that we're sending wrong messages to ourselves and the world around us. And we're creating this reality because we aren't conscious of how we're using our body and what it's communicating. So body language brings us back to that presence of what is alignment. Okay, well, if I'm out of alignment here, what does that say about my life? How do I get my life back into alignment? And that's what I guide people through, is how to do the life process.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I feel like, wow, I have learned so much. And I'm so glad that you said it's not just about the posture, because you can change your posture around, but it's still doing that emotional work and putting in effort. And sometimes that's scary. That's hard. What do you have to say to that person that's like, man, this is a lot. Like what can they what can they take from this that might not feel like a lot? What's like give us a small bite that we can implement even today, that we can do to have better days?
Mhm. Feel into that. Yeah, well, one of the things I love to do, so if there's something that I said today that lit up an awareness inside of you, like for example, we were talking about big mouth at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that you're able to appreciate about your big mouth?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at that affirmation, how can I affirm my bigness?
Mm-hmm.
And then also ask yourself, is there somewhere where my bigness might be imposing on somebody else? How am I able to contain that? Or like for myself, one of the big things I like to do is just love, love, love. Like I am a well of knowledge and I love to share it. And I've also
Mm-hmm.
realized like not everyone is going to value it. And so I have to check myself and say, am I pouring out so much and people aren't really valuing it and they're not nourishing my garden back? Do I need to redirect my nourishment somewhere else that's going to nourish me back? Or do I keep pouring here? Is this an investment right now for someone that's young and is going to grow into be able to invest? Or am I investing my energy into someone that just wants to take, right? So it's about checking what is our pattern and where is it our strength and where are we allowing it to be taken advantage of?
So it's just kind of doing a reflection then, basically, is what
Yeah.
you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, because body language is a hands-on, eyes-on approach. There's no
Mm-hmm.
5 steps. It's
Yeah.
look at your reflection and work with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's easy. I think most people have a note, some type of note-taking device, and can sit in the mirror and say, "Okay, I see this. I see this. Now let me get hooked up with Kelly Love's program so we can take this information and learn about ourselves and do something with what it is that we are self-aware of, not to just be aware of these things, but to do something with it.
Yes.
And I think for some people that's the hard part. Like, man, I know that I'm stressed out. I know that these are the things, but okay, well, what are you gonna do about it? Like you said, accountability and responsibility. Are you gonna be responsible to yourself to do something different, to have better experiences for yourself? And if not, then that's a decision. And if so, that's also a decision, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some things I'd love to encourage the audience with is the gift of body language is it validates your lived experiences as
Mm-hmm.
well as all of those deep-seated desires from your soul that's like bring me to life. It really validates the core of who you are and what you've experienced. And it's your blueprint. I mean, it's learning how to come back to this body and feel safe in it, because I love to share etymology because it's so powerful. Like the word embodiment means for the spirit to take form and animate something to life.
Mm-hmm.
So body language is understanding how much of our Holy Spirit has been brought to life and how good do we feel about this expression coming to life. And so, when you look at your reflection, it's love. Even the aches and the pains and the dis-ease and the surgeries or whatever, this is love being like, look here, we've got to address something right here. And the proof of love is in the pain. And even, and I know that sounds contradictory, but the pain points us to where the comfort is.
Wow.
And same with, being in a relationship with someone that's abusive. Even the love of God is speaking through them and how their body gets shaped over time. This is something that's been so validating for me in my own healing experience as I've gone back and looked at my family and seen how their dark energy shaped them over 40 years.
Yeah.
It is etched into who they are. It is clearly able to be seen. And that's what allows me to accept them for who they are and accept myself for who I am, stop projecting my goodness onto them, and allow them to live the life they've chose while I go live a life that I choose.
Yeah. Wow. Well, like I said, this was a good episode. I knew coming in that I was going to be learning some things. I hope you all have felt the same, that you have a new perspective. Body language is not that talked about. How come, at least in the circles that I'm in, nobody is talking about body language? Why? I feel like this is such a unique thing. What do you feel like it's so woo woo, or like, are people afraid to talk about it? Is it because yeah, I think my first, and you said it, and I was like, ooh, she's calling me out a little bit, is you kind of want to hide. When someone's like, ooh, I read body language, yeah, you almost kind of want to hide because it's like, oh, my vulnerabilities might be showing without me even saying so. And so for me, I feel like maybe that's why body language is not talked about so much. What would be your opinion?
Well, I feel like there are certain forces that like to keep us dumb.
Hmm.
And body language is simple enough that children are able to learn it. And body language is so universal that children speak it out of the womb.
Wow.
So, there are 5 distinct cries that baby make to communicate their basic needs. And what I've noticed with parents is the baby or the young child is always displaying what's going on in the home. What the parents refuse to address and be sensitive to, the baby picks up on that energy, or the young child picks up on that energy and displays it. So, this language is just a language of love. And how do we love ourselves? How do we, and why is it not talked about? That I want to get back to that question. We live in a matrix that is ran with shame and fear programming.
Yeah.
And so body language is that spotlight in the darkness. And for those of us that are still running on the shame and fear programming, we're afraid that the light is going to kill us, but the light is here to bring us to the life. And I like to bring up trees as a beautiful example of how light and darkness work together. Trees are gravitropic and phototropic, so they grow downwards and they grow upwards. They pull their nutrients up and they pull their nutrients down. And the point of the roots is to go into the darkness, to break down what is there and give it back to the tree in such a way that it nourishes it and makes it strong, so that when it reaches up to the light and pulls down that light, it's able to create food. And then what was pulled up from the darkness comes up and it meets the food, and it turns in, like the photosynthesis process turns into sugar basically. So it's taking this darkness and making it sweet. Like, this is the function of light, is to bring life. You have bacteria growing or mold growing. What do? You bring it to the light. It can't grow in the light. So this is what this is all about. It's just about bringing it to the light, but we're still so much in that fear and shame programming.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be seen. So this is why I like to have these conversations, to show how this is love and it's your best friend.
Yeah, it reminds me of something Riki teacher. I watch her a little bit on TikTok, and she was talking about fear, and she said, fear really is, let fear guide you to where, you need to be stronger. And so I said, for me, it was so weird. I had heard that message, and then I was taking an Uber home from work one day. And it was so bizarre. I noticed immediately when I got in the car how bright this person's car was. And his name is Raul. So shout out to Raul. I don't know if you'll ever see this, but I do hope we connect again. Just so bright. And I just thought, my first thought was, oh, this is going to be a good car ride home. And he is a window cleaner. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I clean windows. I said, oh, well, what's the tallest building that you've ever cleaned? He said, 70 floors. And I was just like, I'm like, oh my God, dude, you're making me sweat. And he's like, what? He's like, well, what are you afraid of? I said, I'm scared of heights. And he said, really? I said, I can do roller coasters. I said, but if you were to ask me to walk across the Golden Gate Bridge, I will start crawling, or I just won't even attempt it. I said, the Golden Gate Bridge does not need me to walk across it. I said, that's a fear that I do not need to face. And he was cracking up with me, and he said, well, what if you did do it? He said, do you think that that would unlock something in your mind about fear and your ability to face things? And I thought, oh man. I said, yeah, you're right. He said, well, just take it easy, start with a little bridge, crossing a little bridge, and then eventually you'll get to the Golden Gate Bridge and you'll be able to walk across it with confidence. But, that shame and that fear, it does keep you from, yeah, from experiencing other things that you might want to experience, but because you're afraid, because you're ashamed, and maybe you're not willing to move past that or dig deeper into that, you're stuck. And so that makes me think of different blocks, like you said earlier. Even, the thing that comes to mind is like money blocks, but also like energy blocks. Where is this? Where am I stuck? Where am I blocked? And how do I identify it? And, just to bring it, I guess, full circle, or just to bring it back to the topic, body language can be, looking at your own body language, reflecting on yourself can be a good indicator of where you might be blocked. Is that a good connection?
Oh yeah. Where you're
Okay.
blocked, where you're losing your energy, where you're armoring it up, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, is there anything that you have to say? Any final words that you would like to say to the audience as we wrap it up?
Yeah, I would. I want to speak to those that feel the truth of the moreness inside of them, that they want to experience more, that life does have more, that they can look at someone else having more and their soul cries out and says, I need more. That is the bigness, the moreness, the vastness of God in us saying, you are capable of more, you deserve more, you are made for more. And body language is your path to fulfilling your moreness.
Yeah.
How do I get it all?
Okay.
That's it for today's check in. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, hit that subscribe or follow button, and let's keep growing together. Hey, and if you're tuning in on YouTube, drop your after emoji in the comments and tell me what shifted for you. I'll see you next time on Miss Win Checking In, where creativity is a pathway to wellness.